at number 10 is cast members who get to experience the rides after dark. And by get to, I mean have to. They're absolutely forced to. Well, apparently some of these rides are absolutely 100% haunted, especially It's a Small World. I remember I was stuck on that ride one time and I wanted to absolutely kill myself because it was so annoying. It was on repeat. It's so repetitive. Well, multiple cast members have reported seeing the little animated dolls blink or appear in entirely different places long after that they've been unplugged and switched off for the night. Honestly, there's just something about the ride that creeps me out, and a reason why I just won't go on this ride ever again. And at number 9 is the poor employee who had a little bit of a game with Walt Disney himself after he died. A bit of backstory. Whenever Walt was at the parks, the staff would always make sure that the light in the window of the fire station was turned on to let everyone know, you know, Walt's here, let's be on our best behavior. Well, once he died, they turned off the lights. But one day, a staff member was cleaning the room where the lamp was, and they saw that it was turned on. She turned it off, turned around, and when she turned back, it was switched on again. This would freak me out. She again turned it off. I wouldn't do that. I would just run like crazy, not look back, put in my resignation, and I'd probably go work for Microsoft or something. Well, something inside her was telling her that Walt was letting her know that, hey, I'm still here. I'm still much alive in this park. Well, since then, the lights always stay on to let everyone know that Walt is looking down on the parks. So everyone there better be on their best behavior. Following up, at number 8 is when a Disney employee noticed that there was a mysterious box chained to a lamppost. Anyone who's seen any type of crime shows know that if there's a mysterious package anywhere, it might be a bomb, and to clear the area and call 911. This employee jumped into action and did just that, because the last thing anybody wants is an active bomb in the happiest place on earth, filled with excited kids and their families. Turns out, thankfully, it wasn't a bomb. It was just some family's lunch, and they just didn't want to carry it around with them. But seriously guys, I don't understand wanting to carry your lunch around. I mean, at that point, just go out and buy lunch in a restaurant. Just go buy a turkey leg somewhere. Well, I guess on this day, it would save a lot of people a lot of stress. Okay, next up, at number 7 spot is the employee who had to help break up a fight that could have ended really poorly. Apparently, a group of 20-year-olds were getting rowdy and started punching each other in the arms. But one of them missed and ended up punching a 12-year-old girl right in the face. Is this real life right now? How do you mess that up? Which is, well, this is bad enough, but imagine doing that and then realizing that the little girl's dad is right there. It's like, and then right behind her is this big dude. Well, this guy, he was actually 6'4", over 300 pounds, and really mad. Like really mad. It literally took 4 security guards and 2 deputies to pull the dad off the guy who punched his daughter, but not after bloodying up himself. Number 6 today goes to a worker who might have told an exorcism at the Haunted Mansion. Apparently before the ride even opened up, an employee heard music coming from the walls of the seance room. Mysterious music is bad enough from any room, but a seance room? Especially when there are rumors that the spell book was a real one, which was once owned by witches. Well, that is class A nope material for me. Instead of cleansing the place, this employee decided to just install speakers to drown out the noise, but I guess whatever helps you sleep at night, I guess. Halfway through, and at number 5 is a staff member who discovered the body of a man who had died in his hotel room. I guess cleaning staff must have found him, but it was apparent that he had taken his own life. The room's windows and entrance were covered by those "Pardon our dust" signs. I've never seen that kind of sign before, like, pardon, we didn't clean this place, don't mind it. And there was an important meet and greet to distract people from the room as police arrived on the scene. No matter what I encountered in my life, I feel like finding someone else's body would probably be the scariest thing to happen. And at number 4 is the employee who had to stop a situation that could have ended a lot worse than it did. This group of drunk people were on the Dumbo ride with their infant when they decided that it would be a good idea to reenact The Lion King. Yeah, you guys know where I'm going with this one. You guys know what I'm talking about. Well, they took off the seatbelt of the kid, and they held their hands like Rafiki did to Simba during the Circle of Life. Well, the ride operator emergency stopped the ride, and the entire group was escorted out of the park and arrested as soon as they stepped out of the gates. So did they have to wait until they were completely out of the park to be arrested? Because I would try to resist and never leave, like I would never try to cross that line of like Disney, exit, Disney, exit. Next up, number 3 is an employee who had to deal with a watery attack. Well, during a jungle cruise, everything was going pretty well until suddenly one lady entirely lost her cool at the guy sitting in front of her. Mind you, he hadn't done anything other than enjoy his ride because he's in the happiest place on earth. Well, she started to scream at him and then lunged at him, clawing his face and kicking him. The skipper on board had to fire 4 rounds from his pistol into the air to warn other boats, rushed back to the dock, and tried to pull the lady off of the guy. Well, apparently half the people on board were trying to help as well. When medical and security arrived, they finally got her secured and into an ambulance. Turns out she was schizophrenic and hadn't taken her medication that day, and unfortunately had an episode in the middle of the water. It's always sad when somebody has a mental illness that affects them like that. Like you're trying to enjoy your ride and all of a sudden you're having panic attacks, you're freaking out. But I can't even imagine how scary that would have been for staff and customers as well, who may not be experienced with understanding what that person is going through. Number 2 today goes to an employee who had to deal with the aftermath of something truly disgusting. Apparently in line at one of the rides, a fully grown man decided to take a poop in the corner of the pre-show, which is pretty damn disgusting, especially when you remember that Disney is filled with kids, and kids are curious, and they like to satisfy their curiosity by finding things and putting it in their mouth. Yeah, so one kid actually saw the poop and decided it was snack time. The mom rushed the kid to the staff washroom in a panic where the employees were just staring in shock. If I was the employee in that situation, I wouldn't do anything at all because I would just be in total shock. My mouth would just be like, is this real life right now? Did that guy really take a And finally, in a number 1 spot is a cast member who met their tragic end at one of the shows back in 1974. 18-year-old Deborah Gale Stone was working at the American Sings attraction at Disneyland at the end of the night. She got too close to the area of the stage by a moving wall and a stationary wall. And as the one wall moved, she got trapped between the two and ended up being crushed. Nobody was in the theater with her, but the ride operator next door heard her screams and rushed to help. But unfortunately, they were too late. Eventually, the solid walls were replaced with, breakable ones to prevent a tragedy like this, one to prevent someone getting squished. I don't know who thought of this. There should be like a fail safe or like pressure sensors. Like, you know how you have a garage door and something's underneath it, it would go and then all of a sudden stop because there are sensors? Well, they definitely should have had one in place. Well, it was rumored that Deborah now haunts the attraction and now can be heard telling others to be careful.
Starting off this countdown, we have the snake. You have to be careful when going to Animal Kingdom. Not all the animals are safely behind cages. In 2016, a grandma and her grandson were at Animal Kingdom when a wild snake fell from a tree and bit the grandson. Now, he was fine, the snake wasn't venomous. But the grandmother went into cardiac arrest after seeing this all happen. And sadly, she passed away. Wouldn't that be a terrifying encounter? Like, you go to Disney with a relative looking for a good time, and then you end up injured and your relative dead. I feel so sorry for that family. The family, of course, sued Disney World because turns out that the snake was a local Florida serpent and somehow made it onto the resort. In our 9th spot today, we have the Big Brawl. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then why don't you smash that like button? Imagine celebrating Christmas at Disney World only to encounter a real-life Scrooge. So back in 2015, an old man was waiting for his food at a cafe in Disney World when he became tired and grumpy. And no, not like one of the 7 dwarves. He was fed up, saying it was taking too long. So, what did he do? He shoved one of the managers and started a huge fight among them all. At one point, he got tackled down. People were so scared that they fled the restaurant without even paying for their meals. So they dined and dashed at Disney. What a little rebel. In the end, the man was arrested and thrown out of Disney. Thankfully, only a few were injured in this fight. But still, imagine witnessing that fight on a time of holiday cheer. I bet he got cold in his stocking. Also, since when is Disney open on Christmas? Is that a thing that I just never knew? Let me know in the comments below. In our 8th spot today, we have the Cleanliness. So Disney parks seem very well maintained and clean, right? Like there's no graffiti, hardly any litter on the grounds, and the rides seem to be well kept. Well, yes and no. According to a cast member, all the locations that a visitor can see are kept super clean, but the areas they don't see are disgusting. For example, apparently the inaccessible parts of the Haunted Mansion ride are gross. Like they are dusty, filled with cobwebs, and they have a nasty stench. And no, that was not part of the attraction. And they even found asbestos there. But obviously the park guests aren't supposed to know that, so it's okay, right? No, I'm sorry, that's gross. According to the same worker, every time she came home from her shift, she stunk and had to take a shower immediately. Yikes. Coming in our 7th spot, we have Splash Mountain. Disney has strict protocols in place to keep all its guests safe. Most of the injuries that have occurred on rides have been a result of people not listening to the safety protocols, like standing up in a ride or unbuckling themselves during the rides, etc. Sadly, this happened to a man riding the Splash Mountain ride. According to a Disney employee, he tried to get out of the ride and ended up getting struck by the raft behind him. He died from the impact. Police said it was a very strange incident, and as a result, Disney had to put even stricter protocols in place. In our 6th spot today, we have the illegal rider. So Disney has those height and age restrictions on rides for a reason. Please, follow them. It can be dangerous if those protocols aren't followed. Well, according to one Disney employee, they were horrified after encountering someone who was basically trying to cheat the system. So this was on the Space Mountain ride. They were doing their checks to make sure everyone had their little seat belts and I guess harnesses on correctly, when they saw a man with a large bag by his feet. The bag then started moving. The employee demanded he open the bag to show what was in there, but he kept refusing. Finally, the crew member got the bag, opened it, and inside found a kid. The parent had tried to hide their kid in a bag so they could still go on the ride. Are you kidding me? Like, that is so dangerous. They were literally going to risk their kid's life to just go on a Disney ride. That is insane. But also, according to employees, this happens more often than you would think. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the gun. Don't know how Disney let this pass security, but someone managed to sneak a gun into Disney. So a grandma and her grandson were riding the dinosaur ride from the dinosaur movie. Like, whoa, major throwback. I remember that ride. Anyways, at one point, she kicked something on the floor of the ride, and she was like, that's suspicious. What is that? She bent down to see what it was, and turns out it was a fully loaded gun. How someone managed to bring that into the park baffles me. Also, why? Anyways, they alerted the ride attendant and the police were called. The police found out that the gun belonged to a man named Angelo Lista. He claimed he didn't know he couldn't bring a fully loaded weapon onto a children's ride. Like, imagine if that thing went off. That would have been bad. Anyways, we still don't know why Angelo decided to bring that with him, but at least no one got injured. I bet that was one unforgettable day. In our 4th spot today, we have the ghost of Walt Disney. According to a number of employees, they believe that the ghost of Walt Disney haunts his park. In fact, a ghost was supposedly caught on security camera footage. You can see this ghostly figure just casually strolling through Disney. Take a look. Security caught this weird ghost on tape and immediately asked others what they thought it could be. There has been some debate on it, like some say it's a glitch or a monitor burn or a reflection, whereas others believe it's the ghost of Walt Disney himself. Or Javier Cruz, a cast member that lost his life in 2004 during a parade float at Disneyland. But what do you guys think of this? Is this real footage of a Disney ghost? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Coming in at number 3, we have the CoverUp. According to a former Disney World College Program cast member, there once was a man who took his life in one of the Disney hotel rooms. And Disney used its magic to cover it all up. So basically, the room in which it happened had its door and windows covered with a "Pardon Our Dust" renovation sign. When police arrived, they had a bunch of costumed characters and cast members go to one section of the hotel for a meet and greet to distract the guests from seeing the police come into the building. Apparently, Disney constantly does this. They always divert your attention when something traumatic happens. For example, another employee said that they used fire jugglers to distract people when an animal control officer had to get a venomous snake out of the hotel's water fountain. And this guy only had 15 minutes to do it while the show was going on. Honestly, it just seems super stressful working for Disney. I swear, some Disney workers are like trained as if they're part of the FBI or something like that. In our second spot, we have the stunt gone wrong. According to a number of articles, the Hollywood Studios Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular Show was one of the most dangerous shows at Disney. Also, what a name. Hollywood Studios Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular Show. Geez, say that 10 times fast. Now, why is this? Well, a number of stunt performers have gotten badly injured in this action-packed show. Apparently, one performer fell 30 feet to the ground after his support cable broke. Another time, a different performer fell 25 feet to the concrete. And a third fell 25 feet to the ground after a prop ladder broke. Thankfully, those performers all survived. But in 2009, one performer passed away after performing a tumbling roll. For this trick, the performer had to jump in the air, dive over another performer, and then tuck and roll onto a mat. But something went wrong, and the performer ended up landing wrong and snapping their neck. That is absolutely heartbreaking and terrifying. And in our number one spot today, we have the Haunted Dolls. I think that the scariest ride in Disney would have to be It's a Small World. Like, take a look at those terrifying dolls. And apparently, they're haunted, okay? According to a number of Disney employees, they have seen the dolls in the ride change positions, disappear, or even move when the ride is off. Some even say that their hair appears to grow on its own, as if they're alive. In fact, every couple of months, Disney's cosmetology team goes in and cuts the doll's hair because they grow. But they say it's just the humidity combined with gravity and then that causes the hair to stretch. Either way, it's freaking creepy. According to one employee, they arrived for their morning shift only to find that a couple of dolls switched places during the night and some vanished without a trace. So listen here, Annabelle, okay? Leave those damn dolls alone. Don't touch Disney. Starting off this countdown, we have the Lifeguards. So I came across this TikTok and apparently he used to be a lifeguard at Disney.
This is what Disney throws in the water to test their lifeguards. But what they don't tell you is that the lifeguards are told that they have to be constantly watching the water as if somebody's purposely trying to drown their child, because people apparently do that. Disney noticed that people would go there to drown their children on purpose so that they could sue Disney and they could get rid of their child at the same time. So Disney lifeguards are trained to look for that.
That is absolutely horrifying if he's telling the truth. It must be super stressful being a lifeguard at Disney. Like, their water parks and wave pools are always packed. It's so sad if that has actually happened. In our ninth spot, we have the deaths. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up. You know the drill, because it really helps us out. Also, if you haven't already, go check out the other parts of the series. So Disney is very, very protective of its image. It wants to maintain that it's a safe and family-friendly place. So they claim that no one has ever died at their park, which is clearly false. Tons of accidents have happened at Disney World and Disneyland. Both visitors and workers have lost their lives at Disney. But their claim is 100% true. Now, you're probably thinking, how is this possible? So it turns out what Disney does is when someone does die at the park, employees have to remove the body from the property before pronouncing them dead. That means no one technically died at the park, only outside of the park's gates. They do this all so that families feel safe coming there, because if no one dies there, then clearly it's super safe. But still, this is pretty sketchy if you ask me. In our 8th spot, we have the injuries. Now, if you work for Disney as one of the characters and you get injured on the job, well, guess what? You can't receive medical assistance until you're out of the public's eye. This is just another crazy rule that Disney has. You have to stay in character no matter what. They all do this to preserve the illusion of Disney and magic. I mean, how horrifying would it be if all of a sudden Mickey rips off his head and starts like gushing blood in front of kids? Now, one worker was told before accepting a job as Water Goofy on a Disney cruise, he had to agree that if for some reason he started drowning, he had to be carried away before lifeguards could remove his costume and perform CPR. So he could literally be dying in the costume and need medical attention right away, but Disney won't allow that. Moving on to number 7, we have the repairs. Ever notice how Disney is pretty much always in great condition? I mean, some of the rides are super old, but they don't look it. Well, according to a former Disney employee, every night workers go around the park touching up any and everything. During the day, the workers note if there's any graffiti anywhere in the park or if there's paint chipping anywhere. They write it down and let the night shift workers know, and then they go around fixing it all. I mean, I just took in that I've never seen graffiti at Disney, and that's exactly why. But also, it's a very tedious job. They have to go around the full park and get it all done before the park reopens in the morning. Moving on to number 6, we have the fire accident. So this next story comes from a Disney employee that worked as an outdoor vendor. One night while watching a fireworks show, Tinkerbell got stuck on the wire above the castle since she had been hoisted up because she was flying in the air. But her wire was stuck, and she almost burned to death up there. There was a whole Indiana Jones portion of the show, and in it they had large fireballs. Well, they couldn't stop the show to get Tinkerbell down, so they kind of just left her there and turned off her spotlight so no one could see what was going on, and then they prayed for the best. But like I said before, it's a risk you take while working for Disney. You know, you could be dying and they're not gonna save your life if it interferes with their show. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the cursed ride. Believe it or not, but there is a ride at Disney that all workers believe is cursed. This is the Matterhorn. First off, this ride is responsible for the most fatal and non-fatal incidents. In 1964, a teen on the ride stood up in the bobsled and then died after being thrown out from the ride. Then another time, the ride caught on fire, injuring a family in their sled. And another visitor died after she was launched out of her seat and then hit by another bobsled. More on this later. You think they would have fixed this ride after the first couple of deaths, but no, they blame it on a curse instead. They should just kind of look into the safety of that ride, because I don't know if it's that safe. In our 4th spot, we have the Death on Space Mountain. Okay, this one is pretty dark. So in 1979, a woman died on the Space Mountain ride. She was only 31 at the time. So basically, after the ride was done, this woman didn't feel well at all, but she couldn't get out of her seat by herself. The ride operators were trying to get her out of her seat, but the other workers weren't notified, so they ended up sending her on the ride again. This time, when the ride was done, she was completely unconscious. It literally put her in a coma. She passed away a week later. Now, technically, this wasn't Disney's fault. I mean, part of it was. They had a lawsuit filed against them, but it was dismissed because apparently while on the ride, a tumor dislodged from her heart and then traveled to her brain. Yeah, I know, that's super scary. In our 3rd spot, we have the ghost of Walt Disney. So for those of you who don't know, Disney had a secret apartment. It was located just above the firehouse on Main Street, USA. This apartment was built so that he could watch the guests enjoy his creation without being overwhelmed by the crowds. Now, his apartment was so secretive that him and his family and special guests were the only ones allowed in there. In fact, photographers were rarely allowed inside. As a result, there are hardly any photos of Mr. Disney and his family in this place. Well, after the passing of Walt Disney in 1966, cast members decide to place a small lamp at the window. They keep the light on to symbolize that Disney's spirit is still alive at Disneyland. And this may be indeed true, because it's said that his ghost still haunts his apartment. A number of employees have seen Disney while cleaning the apartment. Apparently one worker was in there and then the lights started flickering on and off. Another worker said she heard a voice say, "Don't forget, I am still here." And that's when she probably quit, because that's terrifying. In our 2nd spot, we have Dollys Dip. So in 1984, Regina, otherwise known as Dolly Young, was riding on the Matterhorn when her seatbelt came undone. She was then thrown from the ride and hit and killed by another bobsled. Now, there's still much debate as to how her seatbelt came undone. Some say that she unbuckled it to help her children who were in another car. Others think that the seatbelt just wasn't buckled properly in the first place. Either way, this accident was super tragic. But that's not all. Now Disney employees claim that Dolly's spirit haunts the ride. The area in which she died is now called Dollys Dip, and employees hate going there by themselves. Those that do have claimed to feel like someone is watching them. Others say that the lights in Dollys Dip never work properly anymore. Now everyone kind of just avoids that area at all costs. And in our number one spot, we have the tragic accident. So this story was shared on Reddit by a man who once worked at Disney as a VIP tour guide. So he was in the city hall when two women came in with two little girls. One of the girls was in a wheelchair, the other girl looked very depressed. Both of them had cuts and bruises all over them. The two women with them were nurses from the hospital that the girls had just been to. They were there to ask for a refund for the girls' tickets. Now, here's where the story gets very sad. So apparently the girls had been with their mom and dad at Epcot, but on their way home they got in a really bad car accident. They both lost their parents in the crash. So the nurses had come to try and get a refund for the tickets so that the girls could get money to try and go home. Now, how dark is that? That's extremely sad.
At number 10, fake it till you make it. Disney is often referred to as the happiest place on earth. A pretty big claim, but in their efforts to keep the park so positive, they have a few tricks up their sleeves. If you've been to Disney and skipped out on a ride due to the long wait time listed, you may want to reconsider next time. Disney uses the trick of overestimating wait time so you'll think you waited less than you were supposed to. This keeps guests in line happier for longer. Another thing that may seem totally normal are the American flags located all over the park. The flags located within Disney are often missing one of the stars or stripes. Why would they do this? Well, by omitting something from the original flag, it means they don't have to follow standard American flag regulations, like flying them at half-mast at certain times. I mean, that's pretty smart. It's never a happy thing when a flag is at half-mast, so it's fitting they would try to avoid having to do that. When they say Disney is very detail-oriented, they aren't kidding. The last thing I'll mention that may seem real, but is really just the park making the rides seem crazier than they are, is their use of dramatic effects. If you walk past the Twilight Zone or Tower of Terror, you'll hear a lot of screaming. Some of those screams are real, but some are apparently fake and being played through the speakers to entice more guests to go in. Also, the boats at Splash Mountain don't actually cause such a big splash. There are cannons at the end of the drop that make the huge splashes of water. Real or fake, if it makes the day more fun, I'll take it. Number 9, underground tunnels. The rumors are true. There is an entire tunnel system under the park. By the time you reach the entrance of the Magic Kingdom, you probably won't even notice that you've been walking up a slight incline ever since getting off the monorail or ferry. By the time you reach the iconic castle, you'll have already reached the 3rd floor level. Rumor has it the reason they created the underground tunnel system is because of Walt Disney himself. Walt was wandering through Tomorrowland in Disneyland as a staff member dressed as a cowboy walked by him on his way to his position at Frontierland. One look told Disney that a cowboy dressed in a checkered shirt, bandana, and cowboy boots twirling a 6-shooter looked totally out of place in Tomorrowland. Walt didn't want anything to distract visitors from their magical experience, like an old cowboy walking through the future, so when it came time for Disney World in Florida, they planned for the underground world. Due to Florida's high water table, digging out a basement was out of the question, so Disney improvised by building the tunnels at ground level and creating the world right on top. A former employee said, "Under the Magic Kingdom, there are tons of underground tunnels. I could pop up almost anywhere in the park I wanted. Epcot has a tunnel underneath as well." Say what you will about Walt, but he really was dedicated to keeping the illusion alive. Number 8, no breaking character. I think we all know by now that Disney really wants to keep the illusion alive at all times. Having said that, have you ever thought about how the characters who have to wear suits all day don't get super hot? Well, the short answer is they do, but it doesn't matter. Staff members who have to wear large costumes, which I would imagine get pretty stuffy, have to simply ignore the heat and get on with it no matter what. One Reddit user shared a story and said, "A scuba instructor I had once told me that he applied for the job as water goofy on a Disney cruise. Water Goofy is simply Goofy who hangs out by the pool. But before he could accept the job, the scuba instructor had to agree that in the event he started drowning, he had to be carried away before lifeguards remove his costume. You know, so they don't upset the children. CPR would not be performed on scene. I mean, I understand no breaking character, but come on. I really think that in this situation, a few upset children would be worth saving the person's life. But hey, Disney doesn't mess around. The rule goes for employees at parks as well. If you're too hot or dying, do it somewhere else. Luckily, each character is always accompanied by a supervisor that helps them know where they need to go and when. So if things were really getting serious, the supervisor is there to help out. At number 7, too many gators. Walt Disney World is located in Orlando, Florida. One thing Florida is known for is their alligators. While Disney does pull out all the stops in order to keep the park magical, they have had their fair share of run-ins with gators. In 2016, a 2-year-old boy passed away at the Seven Seas Lagoon due to an alligator. Since then, more than 200 alligators have been removed from the parks. The company has worked with trappers contracted through the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission to remove the gators. Most of the pests taken from Disney are euthanized and sold for their hide and meat. Some are also transferred to alligator farms, animal exhibits, and zoos. After the incident in 2016, Disney installed a wall and put up reptile warning signs along waterways throughout the resort. It would definitely take you out of the magic of Disney if you spot a large gator in the water, but they now have a trapper on hand and take care of any sightings. It is Florida, so there really isn't much more the park can do except keep an eye and be proactive. To be considered a nuisance within the statewide nuisance alligator program, an alligator must be at least 4 feet long and pose a threat to people, pets, and/or property. Not long ago, guests spotted a live alligator at Magic Kingdom. Disney can train their performers and dress them to the nines and make all the illusions as real as can be, but the only thing they struggle with is those gators. Unfortunately, even if you are at Disney World, you're still in Florida. Number 6. Strict appearance rules. Dressing as a Disney princess sounds like a pretty good gig, and I think many who have had the job would say that it is. But they may also tell you it's a job that comes with a whole lot of pressure. Working as a Disney princess takes a whole lot more than just throwing on the dress and waving to the guests. All of the performers have to undergo several rounds of auditions, with staff usually having to play multiple characters in the park depending on staffing. When auditioning, everything is being considered: your height, weight, voice, etc. In order for the character to get their voices just right, the performers will watch Disney movies of their characters and repeat the lines back. For most girls, the character's voice is higher than their real voice, so high that some women will go on vocal rest due to strained vocal cords. One former employee shared that despite participating in Disney's college program, she was never able to play a face character because she was too ethnic looking, despite being Italian. Disney favors light hair and skin people so they can play multiple characters. Another employee shares that many of her colleagues have been disapproved of working as face characters because they've either aged or gained weight. It's not a good job for your self-esteem, it sounds like. Apparently, they bring you in once a month, put you in the costume, and reevaluate you. If you're disapproved due to weight gain, you wouldn't be fired, simply switch to a more covered up character. This has led to employees feeling body shamed or that they need to take unhealthy measures to stay thin. Basically, Disney doesn't play around with continuity. The Cinderella you see in the morning will be the same you see in the afternoon, regardless if it's the same actor or not. At number 5. Painful costumes. Becoming a character from such loved Disney movies and meeting kids that think you're the real deal would definitely be fun. But I think the amount of fun you have as a staff member really depends on which character you are. Former character employees told Mental Floss that they've been basically beaten up by visitors and little kids, but the real wear and tear comes from the fur costumes. Apparently every character employee starts out as a fur character, and these costumes can weigh as much as 47 pounds. In 2005, the last year this data was available, the heavy suits were blamed for 282 injuries. One former fur character shared that while in costume she was punched, put in a chokehold, and had her shoulder partly dislocated and bruised 3 fingers. This performer eventually went to physical therapy for her shoulder and needed knee surgery thanks to the weight of the costume. That year, character performers across the 4 parks that made up Disney World reported 773 injuries total. 49 of those cited the heavy costume heads as the case of injury. Another performer once had to go on temporary disability leave after a guest picked her up and shook her while she was playing Minnie Mouse, resulting in whiplash from the weight of the mouse head. Of the 773 injuries, 107 were the result of some sort of aggressive behavior, whether intentional or not, from guests. I guess some Disney visitors get a little too into the fantasy and forget there are people inside working those suits. Luckily, they have rules in place of how long a performer can be in costume at a time before needing a break, which is usually no longer than 45 minutes. At number 4, poorly treated princesses. The princesses in the park are one of the most magical parts of visiting Disney. Decked out with the dress, hair, and accessories, tons of kids and adults are able to make their dreams of meeting their favorite Disney princesses in real life come true. Unfortunately, like with most nice things, there's always someone right there ready to ruin it. Many employees, usually the women characters, say they've experienced inappropriate sexual behavior from park visitors. I know there are unfortunately few jobs that women don't experience this behavior, but the difference with Disney is they can't break character. Reddit user Little Bones wrote, "I was a Tinkerbell performer for Walt Disney World about 3 years ago, and I can't count how many times people would ask me what's under my dress or tried to touch me. I would always shame them to my PhotoPass attendant, their families, and the people in line by loudly exclaiming, 'You want to know what's under my dress? Well, there's pixie dust, of course,' or 'This man's a pirate, he's trying to reach the pixie dust that I keep under my dress,' and they'd walk away in shame like the creepy a-holes they are. It's pretty scary that they can't do much about the harassment, but it's even more scary that there are people at a place full of children sexualizing and literally touching a fictional character made for kids. It may be where dreams come true, but even Disney can't weed out all the creeps at the door." Number 3, shared undies. Alright, this one is seriously my least favorite thing I learned about Disney when making this video. Aside from the fabulous park, action-packed rides, and all the snacks your Disney heart could want, one of the best part about the park is the opportunity to meet your favorite characters in person. Disney cast members go above and beyond to ensure guests visiting the park are experiencing the magic. Well, back in the day, according to reports, Disneyland used to force cast members to share underwear as a part of the costume for work. Ew. The report stated that cast members inside the costumes had to wear regulation company-issued underwear. If you were to wear your own, you would create a visible line that the guests could see. So instead of just giving the cast members their own pack of the proper undies to take home at the end of each shift, employees had to hand in their underwear for washing. This was the way for a while, but the washing of the underwear was so bad they had to stop using the system in 2001. The report said when they started receiving dirty and smelly underwear at the start of their shifts and contracting nasty conditions like pubic lice and scabies, people started to suspect that the underwear garments weren't actually being washed very well. You think? Like, I actually want to gag. Imagine getting ready for work and putting on someone else's dirty undies. And they aren't just dirty undies. They were worn for an entire shift in a heavy costume in the heat, dirty. Disney finally declared that while they still had to wear the uniform underwear, cast members could wash them at home. Number 2, real bones. One thing I know for certain about Disney is they try super hard to make everything look as real as possible. A place that was no exception was the Pirates of the Caribbean ride located in Adventureland. The park was so committed to making things visually appealing that even fake bones used for the skeletons on the ride were not good enough. That's right, when the Pirates of the Caribbean ride opened at Disneyland in 1967, each and every skeleton on the attraction was made of actual human bones. The ride opened just months after Walt Disney's passing and was the last he personally oversaw. One thing, however, the Imagineers couldn't recreate was skeletons. The technology of the time wasn't sophisticated enough to make skeletons that the company felt met their standard of realism. So as a solution, they decided not to fake it and get the real deal. They went right to UCLA where they were able to get real human skeletons for the ride. Probably not what the people who donated their remains to UCLA's medical center imagined their bones would be used for, but hey, I guess chilling at Disney in the afterlife wouldn't be too bad. If being around real human remains gives you the creeps, don't worry because they didn't last forever. Eventually, as fake skeletons and technology improved, a new generation of Imagineers were able to replace the real ones. After being replaced, the real remains were later returned to their countries of origin and given a proper burial. Today, Disneyland says there are no longer any human remains on the ride. That being said, some people are still unconvinced. Jason Petros of Ears Up Disney podcast has a blog post detailing where he believes there are 4 remaining instances of, well, remains. I can't see why they wouldn't remove all the old bones, but hey, you never know, Disney does love its Easter eggs. And at number 1, spreading ashes at Haunted Mansion. The Haunted Mansion is one of Disney's most famous attractions, located in Liberty Square at Magic Kingdom Park. While it is called the Haunted Mansion, it's not actually haunted, and they keep the scare factor pretty mild. That being said, the mansion does hold a pretty haunted secret. Apparently, a lot of people like to scatter the ashes of their loved ones at the park, but more specifically inside the Haunted Mansion. I mean, if you're gonna spread ashes at Disney, the Haunted Mansion does seem like a pretty fitting place. It sounds a bit wild, but in 2018 a report by Wall Street Journal confirmed this fact and even stated that custodians at the park use code words to tackle said problem. HEPA cleanup is used, named after the special vacuum filter needed to suck up very fine particles like ashes and their residue. A story about the Haunted Mansion ride states that people believe that by scattering the ashes ashes on the ride, they join the ghosts and live in the theme park forever. Considering Disney is referred to as the happiest place on earth, I understand why some people would have their wish to be scattered there. However, every time someone sneaks ashes into the park, whether it be in medicine bottles, purses, or makeup compacts, without proper permission, it violates the health and safety code and they have to shut down the park because of it. One Disney custodian told the Wall Street Journal, "The Haunted Mansion probably has so much human ashes in it that it's not even funny." Yikes. The Haunted Mansion may not have been haunted when it first opened, but at this point, it just might be. That was the top 10 dark secrets Disney employees are hiding from you. I have been your host, Maddie, and I will catch you later.